Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and welcome to the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a leading advisory firm where I draw upon my background as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, but reflects the same passion that I exhibit everywhere for teaching, mentoring, and helping others succeed through simple, impactful lessons. It is my hope that you'll walk away with practical takeaways to help you on your leadership journey. Thanks for being a part of this community and for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. Leading from 50,000 feet feels strategic until your team feels invisible. It's easy to drift away from the work that once defined you. Strategy, client relationships, and growth targets take over while the day-to-day reality of your team fades from view. Yet losing this proximity can have serious consequences. It can lead to a credibility gap, an erosion of empathy, and a deficit in decision quality. Proximity, the ability to stay connected to people and to the work itself, is the foundation of credible, human-centered leadership. When you lose it, you lose the trust, you lose the empathy, and the grounding that make leadership real. And let me give you an example. About a decade ago, an executive flew in from our new parent company. It was a year after the acquisition, and the morale in our office was, well, let's just say it was pretty low. When the executive took me to lunch, he asked me how he could bring everyone together. And my answer came faster than I thought. I said quite simply, hold a team meeting, look everyone in the eye, and tell them that the work that they do here matters. Skip the corporate jargon and just let them know they matter. He smirked at me and he said that he loved it so much, right then and there he emailed his assistant to set up a meeting for in our office later that day. When we gathered in the bullpen later on that day, I was filled with anticipation. The moment he started speaking, though, it was all over. All I could hear him say were things like revenue targets, synergies, budgets. Basically, it was a 20-minute lecture. And as the people turned back to their desks, they all rolled their eyes, feeling just as invisible as before. This executive blew it. He absolutely blew it. 90% of that room were project managers, technical analysts, IT specialists, forensic examiners. None of them cared about synergies or integration plans. They cared about being seen and they cared about being valued. The right move was so simple. Tell them that the work matters in words that they could feel, that they are seen, that they feel heard. That moment taught me something I have never forgotten. Language is the first bridge or the first barrier to trust. Once you start speaking in code that only other executives understand, you lose the people who make your strategy possible. You lose the people who make your strategy possible. And nearly a decade later, I feel for this executive. When you stop doing the day-to-day work, you forget what it is like. And he had been an executive for so long that he truly forgot. So today, I want to talk to you about 3 ways that disconnection can destroy leadership. The first one is the credibility gap. Look, when you stop doing the work, your team starts mentally categorizing your input. Some advice will land, and other advice gets the polite nod, followed by the real conversation after you leave. If you haven't experienced the daily work your team does, your strategic guidance may be interpreted differently than you hope. They won't express it directly, but believe me, it happens. Number 2 is the empathy erosion. When you're proving yourself, you typically don't say no. 60-hour work weeks aren't really a choice, they're the cost of advancement. But when you become the leader, your calendar becomes yours to control. You forget what it's like when you couldn't do any of those things. So when someone on your team is drowning, your advice sounds logical, but really disconnected. Saying things like, set better boundaries, push back on unrealistic timelines, etc. I've been there, I know, I've done it. And I've also heard it. These all sound detached from someone who can't afford to be the person who says no. This disconnect can make your team feel misunderstood and uncared for. Number 3, the decision quality deficit. Leaders who have lost proximity make decisions that look smart on paper. They actually crumble when they come into contact with reality. They greenlight timelines that sound reasonable until someone actually has to deliver. That executive I told you about had made communication decisions based on what worked in his world. But here's the problem. He had forgotten that 90% of the team didn't speak that language. The best leaders aren't the ones who fully transcended the work. They're the ones who maintain just enough connection that their guidance stays grounded, their empathy stays sharp, and their decisions stay realistic. And it is about finding a balance between strategic thinking and staying connected to the day-to-day work. So now I want to talk to you about 3 ways that you can maintain that proximity starting today. The first one is the quarterly immersion. What I'd like you to try to do is block time once a quarter to shadow someone on your team or take on a small piece of actual client work, not as a supervisor, as a participant. When you do this, what you will learn is that something needs to change in how you lead, because now you are immersed in the day-to-day. Now you see it, now you feel it. This learning process will keep you engaged and open to new experiences, ensuring that your leadership stays grounded and, most importantly, realistic. Number 2, I want to encourage you to do a listening tour. I'm a very big fan of this. Schedule regular one-on-ones where the only agenda is this: teach me what's changed in your world. And then stop speaking and just listen to your team member. Do not try to problem solve. Do not defend. Just absorb. And then ask questions that invite psychological safety, something we've talked a lot about here on the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. For instance, what's one obstacle you face that no one is asking you about? What's one thing that I probably think is easy that's actually really hard? And if you could change one thing about how we operate, what would that be? The answer will tell you exactly where you have lost proximity. There was a 2023 Gallup study found that employees who feel heard are 4.6 times more likely to feel empowered to perform at their best. Listening, truly listening, is an essential skill for effective leadership. And number 3, it's what I call the language audit. I want you to record yourself in your next team meeting. Count how many times that you used corporate jargon that would mean nothing to someone doing the day-to-day work. That executive that I told you about in the beginning couldn't just speak to people. He'd been speaking executive to executive for so long that the language of human had become foreign. And so if your default communication requires translation, I'm going to tell you right now, you have drifted. And so this week, I encourage you to kill one piece of corporate speak. Instead of saying, let's align, say, let's make sure we all agree. Because minor language changes signal significant changes in your proximity to your team members. You know, I think a lot about that meeting in 2016, not because I'm angry, because I feel for him now in a way that I couldn't back then. He genuinely wanted to connect, but the distance had become too great. I think about it because I'm fearful of becoming him. Even I can feel the pull. The calendar that fills with strategy. The meetings are about direction, not execution. And I catch myself, sometimes, mid-sentence, using 3 acronyms that probably meant nothing to the person across from me. I started my career living with the tools, and today my calendar looks different. The work that got me here is no longer the work I do. But that's okay, because that's leadership growth. That's what leadership requires. But what I am super mindful of is never, ever losing the ability to look someone in the eye and say, the work that you do here matters in a way that they can feel is real. Because I watched a room full of people walk away feeling invisible after a leader flew in specifically to make them feel seen. And that proximity is something I am very sensitive to and don't ever want my team to feel the way that room did. The golden leadership cycle that I developed consists of 3 components, as all of you know. It's about reinvention, it's about resilience, and empowerment. And one important lesson about maintaining proximity as a leader is that it is essential for genuine empowerment. You cannot empower a team without truly understanding them. To build your team's resilience, you must continually reinvent your leadership practices. Because if you lost your title tomorrow, would your team still ask for your advice? Not because they have to, but because your guidance is grounded, your empathy is sharp, and your understanding is current. If the answer is yes, you've maintained proximity. If the answer is, I'm not sure, well, you've got some work to do. And so find one small way this week. Get closer to the work, not to micromanage, to remember what it actually feels like. Because the moment you forget is the moment you start leading from memory instead of reality. And your team, dear leader, deserves way better than that. And remember, leadership isn't about perfection. It is about progress. Take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. See you all next time.